Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Daggerheart. And one thing that I heard from another YouTube commentator who got Daggerheart, played Daggerheart, and then jumped in and was talking about no initiative, no combat order, this major different part of Daggerheart, and something they said about neurodivergence. All right, so let's jump in. So first of all, Daggerheart is unbelievable. I think the best way to understand Daggerheart's release was that it was really released to every influencer they could get a copy to. And then and the release was like, oh, here's a few copies that'll get sold in a couple FLGSs, and maybe, and we'll drop a few copies out through Darrington Press. I think the release really meant influencers, and man, oh man, Daggerheart just absolutely dominated the influencer space. And basically, and it worked. Like every copy that was put out, people did very early, influencers did very early coverage on, and it really worked. Like everybody's talking about it. And Daggerheart really has seized the moment, right? So role play relay. All right, so commentator right here on YouTube, and she was talking about it, and she started talking about no initiative, no combat order, right? So this is fun. Like, so Daggerheart is not a D&D clone, but it's also not a D&D killer. We don't know where it's landed yet, right? It's just it's very different, right? And we just don't know where it's landed yet, right? But it's not a D&D clone, and one of the major differences is no initiative, no combat order. This is a huge, like, there's nothing. This massively changes. And the biggest thing is there's so much crunch in this, but this no combat order, no initiative, this is like straight out of PBTA, which is normally a story game, not actually so this would have been normally a story game, would not have actually been this would not have been, you would never see this in an actual, rules, in anything but the most like fluffy, like non-crunchy game. But Daggerheart is massively crunchy, right? But then this one aspect is completely not. So what shocked me is this Roleplay Relay actually said this design for people, did they design this for people who are neurodivergent, right? The moment she said it, I was like, whoa, right? Like, because the moment I saw this in the game, I was like, this is gonna be a problem, right? Like, and the biggest issue is you got that friend, right? And they're like, oh, I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna go, and then you can go, and then, oh, I'm gonna go again now, and like, it's 5 turns, one person's gone 4 times, one person's gone once, and 3 people have gone 0, right? Like, that can happen by the rules. That can happen in, and you're like, well, the way, and then I think the answer that people are saying back is like, oh, well, that's not a problem. You just don't play with jerks, right? And this is another part of the discussion that's happening right now is, and they said it, Vancouver Quest, actually not, they were talking about it over on Ghostfire Games, right, on their podcast, their weekly podcast, and they said what's really delightful about Daggerheart is it doesn't corral bad players, right? And the moment they said it, I knew exactly what they were saying, right? Like, you could not do this in D&D because D&D takes every player. They're like, hey, we'll take your good and your bad. We're not assuming that you live in a convent, you're a nun, and that you're only playing with other nuns who are going to show nothing but shine and light and love to every other player at the table. We think that one of your friends is a jerk, and we're going to put it in the rules to manage them, right? And Dungeons & Dragons has done that real work. And Dungeons & Dragons absolutely corrals bad players. And so people are like, oh, it's so delightful that Daggerheart doesn't do this. It doesn't corral bad players. Well, what they're expecting is that you don't have a bad player at your table, right? It's lazy and it's easy and it's wrong, right? Like I really feel this was a major problem in Daggerheart, right? So let's get back to this neural. So the moment I saw this, I was like, oh, well, what about the problem player? They're going to go 4 times in 5 turns. One person is going to go once, and 3 people are going to go 0. That can happen by what you just wrote, Spencer Stark, right? And everybody's like, oh, it's so delightful that you're not corralling bad players. No, you are corralling bad players, right? You're saying you as the game master, it's your job to make sure no bad player comes to your table, because if they do, our game's broken, right? Whereas Dungeons and Dragons doesn't do that. They're like, oh, you got 2 nice friends who are well behaved, and you got 1 jerk, and Dungeons and Dragons will manage all of it, right? But Spencer Sparks like, oh, you're like me, right? You hang out with a bunch of Hollywood people. You're a good hang, and everybody that you hang out with is a perfect little nun who's only going to show love and shine and wonder to everybody else at the table, right? You don't hang out with any jerks, do you? Right? I hang out with jerks. My friends hang out with me. I'm a jerk, right? Like, and we need to talk about this. Is very bad. Okay. Now, okay, let me stay focused because I want to get to this neurodivergent. So then I was like, this lady's like, wait, was this designed for people who are neurodivergent? And she said it with a smile, like, I know some people who are neurodivergent. And then she was like, and I was like horrified at first because I was like, wait a second. What it sounds like what you're saying is that neurodivergent people are just going to jump in whenever they want. They're not going to wait their turn. And so this is a mechanical tolerance, or it's mechanically allowing that. It's mechanically provisioning that. Right? Like, and you're like, well, wait a second. Did you just say that, like, my concern about people being jerks, that neurodivergent people are going to do the same thing? They're just going to jump in whenever. And so, and I don't know the answer there, but I kind of felt like, oh, wait, that seems highly problematic, like what you just said, right? But I also then was like, wait a second. Last year, Mackenzie DeArmas put the first autistic non-player character into Dungeons and Dragons, right? Neurodivergence in the lore. This person is opening up the idea that you could design games for people who are neurodivergent. And then I was like, wait a second, did they do that with Daggerheart? Because if that's the case, did they tell people? And if they didn't, do they need to? Right? And the reason why is the same rule set for a group of neurodivergent people going to work seamlessly for people who are not neurodivergent? And shouldn't have that been, it was fascinating. So, and the reality is, I don't know where all this lands. I will say this right now. I don't think that that Daggerheart built a game for people who are neurodivergent. And the reason why is, the reason why I'm saying no, roleplay relay is 100% wrong, that cannot be a possibility, is if you did that, I think it would require you to announce to people that you had done that, so that there was some discussion of, well, if this is built for people who are neurodivergent, or people who are neuro but not divergent, how do they process this? How do they, do they need to be aware that they are playing in a game that was built for someone else, or like who thinks in a different way? And it's so I appreciate your patience, because I think I'm really processing this. I thought this was a really interesting concept. We've already seen neurodivergence written into lore. I don't know if we've ever seen there's a lot of like super niche, like, we've never seen a mainstream release that may have been built for neurodivergent people. And that immediately opens the question, would you have to divulge that? And could the same rule set serve neurodivergent people and neuro people? That's a fascinating question. And so, one, I'm announcing my observation of this discussion starting, and I would and let's end it there. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion, and my musings. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to your humble opinion on the questions I asked. I'd love to hear that. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.